This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast, where we unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Pastor Trip Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose. As we provide fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We're coming to you live from a very rainy Unpacking the Ministry studio in downtown Mount Holly, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we've got a full show for you today as we unpack week 8, all the shenanigans from, I think, what was known as Bymageddon. So we saw a lot of interesting players in our starting lineups. How did you survive? How did it work out for you? We got to talk about some of the big performances, especially at the running back position. It was the week of the running back, I believe. Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall. The Jets won. How about that game? Game of the day, Bengals, Jets. That first window was a little rough this week. It was a little light. I was like, it worked out well for me because I was gearing up for the Unpacking It golf tournament on Monday. So I didn't get to watch quite as much as I normally like to watch. But the first set wasn't as good. The afternoon games were pretty solid. But speaking of the golf tournament, we had a tremendous golf tournament yesterday here in Charlotte. It did rain. It was devastating. It was brutal. However, the guys persevered. They played golf in the rain. They had an awesome attitude, and we celebrated 10 years. It was our 10th anniversary or 10th annual golf tournament, and so we celebrated God and the work he's doing through Unpacking It, through Fantasy Football Fellowship, and it was a special day. It really was. And so we're grateful for everyone that supported the event. And because of this event and the resources that this event generates, it allows us to do Fantasy Football Fellowship the way that we do it. And so we are grateful for that. We're also grateful for your support. If you'd like to support the tournament or support our ministry, you can do that. fantasyfootballfellowship.com/donate. And we appreciate that. Also on today's show, this week's breakout, here's the title: I wish I had your team. And so we're going to talk about envy and jealousy and coveting, because this can get all of us, especially in fantasy, but it also gets us in life. We look around and we go, I want that. I want that. I want that player. I wish he was on my team. And so how do we respond to that? How do we wrestle with that? So we will get into that during our weekly breakout segment, and encourage everybody to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com. Not too late to get your free membership. Finish up the season strong. Get the content. Fantasyfootballfellowship.com. All right, let's say hello to Trip. I got to see him yesterday at the golf tournament. Trip, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. It was awesome to be out there for me. I mean, admittedly, I didn't have nearly as much to do and to worry about as you did. And so I was able just to hang out and enjoy putting some faces with some names that I had heard. And honestly, man, just to hang out and to hear some stories from guys who run some of these fantasy football fellowship leagues in their churches with their friend groups. I mean, it was super cool to get to talk face to face from some of the people who I know digitally about the way that this ministry and being intentional about commissioning, aka shepherding, aka pastoring their little fantasy football league has been such a good thing for their relationships with their friends, for their spiritual lives. So I had a great time yesterday, man. And like you said, in spite of kind of some yucky weather, it was super fun to meet some of those guys. I'm thankful for the guys that came out, and it just affirms to me people who are taking who are making a financial decision to support this ministry, that giving is not in vain. There is a great return on investment of that giving. Probably we won't know the full fruit of that until we get to the new heaven, the new earth, and hear about some of these leagues and podcast guests that you have on your Unpacking It podcast that really bless people's lives. It was cool to hear those stories all morning yesterday as I was hanging out with some of the guys before they headed out on the course.
In the rain. No, I appreciate it. Very kind, and very grateful. So it's cool. 10 years, big deal. Put on a tournament every year. We've done it 10 years. Only 2 years we had rain. So pretty good odds there. And we were able to do the tournament even in the midst of COVID. So we never missed a year over the last 10 years. And so, very grateful for that.
But hey, man, I woke up this morning and I realized we're over the hill halfway through the fantasy regular season. And this is where the people in casual leagues whose records aren't too good, they start to check out. You start to have an idea of what your team can do and what it can't do and what your needs are trade-wise and waiver-wise. So this is the time to buckle down and get your team into the playoffs. This is when you got to get serious. We've got half of the regular season behind us. It's time to start paying attention to, am I going to get my team into the playoffs? Is there anything that I can do? Once you get into the playoffs, all bets are off. Yeah. And anyone could win once those kind of 6 teams get into the playoffs. And this is the time of the year that makes or breaks your team as a playoff-bound team.
Make the push, build a playoff roster. It's go time. So let's take a look at what's going on in the fantasy world, and we begin with all the shenanigans.
Fantasy Shenanigans.
So yes, the midway point of the season. This is a big time of year, and you know what I was thinking about is the reminder that the stars eventually shine this season, every season. Like, it's just guys get off to slow starts, but the studs, the talented players, the guys you know are good, they eventually emerge. Now, sometimes the rookie that you hope will be great doesn't emerge. It's not his year. But guys that have proven it over and over, when they're healthy, they show up and they do it. And so we saw it with Saquon Barkley. I'm not surprised by the slow start for him. We know the numbers coming off a tough year. I wouldn't have drafted him in the first round, but Saquon Barkley is still Saquon Barkley. So we're going to see some big weeks from him, no question about it. My guy, Chase Brown, finally showed up last couple of weeks. The Bengals look better. He's a stud. He's gonna put good games together. We shouldn't be surprised by Jonathan Taylor. The guy's a stud. He was drafted to be a stud. He's proven that he's a top running back. He's had injuries in recent years, and he hasn't been good because of injuries. Now they have a good team around him. He's healthy. He's lighting it up in the fantasy world. So that is my big takeaway. And the shenanigans that we go through is we start doubting those guys. Well, Barkley's no good anymore. Taylor's no good anymore. Now these guys are still good, but we also have to factor in other things. So with Barkley, you have to still factor those issues in as far as all the carries he got last year, that kind of thing. But anyway, that's my opening thought.
One of my big sort of driving principles in everything that I do when I play fantasy football is to me, there is no difference between finishing in second place in a league and 12th place in a league. And I know there are some people, your buddies give you a hard time for that last place finish. I do not care. For me, if I don't win the league, I don't remember in any of my leagues that I was in last year who finished in 6th place, who finished in 9th place. It just doesn't matter. And so putting that principle together with the point that you just made, a few weeks ago, like I was able to go out and make a big offer and trade for Jamar Chase. Right? Could that have backfired because the Bengals are a disaster this season? Absolutely, it could have. It still could. But Jamar Chase is the kind of player where if everything goes right, he wins you a league.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to kind of sit here with this middling team and not take risks on this sort of like, I'll just finish in 5th place this year and at least I won't get made fun of by my buddies for being in last place. To me, that raises a question. The thought that I had when you just said what you just said is Brian Thomas Jr. a stud? Is this a guy that the Jaguars coming out of the bye, trying to figure some things out? Him and Trevor Lawrence don't seem to be on the same page. To me, BTJ is a guy that you go trade for if you're in like 6th place and you're like, I got to do something significant to make the push to win this league. And it could be a kind of move where you trade for him and then you finish in 10th place because he never puts it together.
But if he does,
season. But you're banking on that talent that we all saw last year. So I mean, you're exactly right. Studs, they're most likely they are going to stud at some point. And so you just got to make that move and cross your fingers.
It seems so obvious, but we as fantasy managers get so caught up in the most recent game and we get all excited about these guys that have the one big week or the waiver wire darlings. And we'll talk waiver wire today. We got to pick them up for sure. But who are the studs? Stick to those guys and ride it out and go get them. And so that's there was a guy in my league who benched James Cook this past week.
Right. Yeah.
You don't do
He's
that.
Had a few down weeks. You can understand the thought process, but then he just explodes for 216 yards. I mean, yeah, exactly. You got to keep those guys in your starting lineup.
They're the guys. You just stick with them. You ride and die with them. And so the one shenanigans from the weekend, we always talk about injuries. And I was trying to think back, what player has been universally loved as quickly and universally loved as Cam Scatterbo. I'm not sure. I can't really think of anybody else in recent years. And so it was devastating for the NFL and fandom and fantasy football on Sunday when he got injured. And it was a nasty injury. And so I hate it for him. I hate it for, I don't really care about Giants fans, but fantasy managers that had him. I did not. I was disappointed not to have him. But from a fantasy standpoint, I do have Tyrone Tracy. And so now he gets to go back into the starting lineup, which I'm thankful for. But we all want Scatterbo out there. He was great for the league. And that was devastating. So, and I think you were wondering, do you watch the replay?
I happened to be watching that in real time as it happened. And the camera quickly panned to Jackson Dart. And you could see from his reaction that something really bad had happened. And then they cut to a commercial. And then Red Zone decided to show the replay. And the funny thing that happened is my wife, my oldest son, and my mom, she was on grandma duty this weekend. They were all sitting in there as well. And to watch everyone's reactions, my son was fascinated by the fact that someone's foot could do what Cam Scatterbo's foot did. My mom and my wife were both repulsed. And I in general, I'm like, I don't want to see the replay if I know that it's that bad. But that was one where it's just right there in front of me. And man, it was wild. It reminded me of the injury to Dak Prescott a few years ago where his his ankle broke and his foot was around. But if the only thing that you knew about Cam Scatterbo was, first of all, he tried to do the thing where he gets a trainer under each arm to sort of walk off the field on his own power. I don't know if you noticed that. He was like I'll walk off to the sideline. It's like, bro, your foot is pointed the wrong direction. Oh. And then when they loaded him onto the cart, he starts hyping up his sideline. He starts, come on, guys, get it going.
Oh, and he was in Philly, and they gave him a standing
right. They're clapping for him. Yeah. He's trying to get his team hyped up, like we can still win this thing. If that was all you knew about Cam Scatterbo, you'd be like, this guy is awesome for football. Awesome. He's fun to have on your fantasy team. And I guess the hope is that he fully recovers and he's back and ready to play next season. But his season is over. And that does make Tyrone Tracy, and I think maybe even if in a deeper league or if you're in a desperate place for running back, Devin Singletary wasn't healthy at the beginning of the season. We saw him get a little bit of work in this game. He could have a 2-point week for you if you put him in your starting lineup, but you might just get lucky and he might have a 10-point week during these buys if you're just desperate at running back. So it makes a few players relevant. It's just one more bad beat for the Giants. And I think just at this point, it's like this season is about just developing Jackson Dart as a quarterback, as a player. There's reason for optimism for them next year. But yeah, their season is over. Be interesting to see if Brian Dable is there next year. I mean, they've had so many bad breaks this season, and you can just tell he's melting down on the sideline. He feels he's beside himself with all the bad luck that he has had.
It's bad. It's really bad. So, the next coach that comes in, he's going to be pretty excited because he's going to start the year, hopefully, as long as everybody gets healthy. Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatterbo.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's a good start with Jackson Dart. And Dart continues to be impressive. I was looking at rankings today, and I've got to make a choice between Dart and Stafford this week. And the rankings I was looking at, Dart was higher than Stafford. I mean, that's crazy to think. And Stafford's coming off a 5-touchdown game 2 weeks ago before his bye. So Dart is in that mix, which is impressive. All right, other shenanigans from the week. I mean, the Jets winning, that's one thing. The Dolphins winning. And so both of those teams had good fantasy days as well. But the matchups, I mean, it's becoming more and more clear the defenses you want your fantasy players to play against. You love going against Dallas. You love going against Cincinnati. You want to be in those Dolphins games, those Jets games. Like those are great for fantasy purposes. And then the biggest shenanigans of the week, the Falcons. I mean, what in the world? I don't know what to say. I have no idea. They are the weirdest team we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, Bijan did nothing. Kirk Cousins, poor guy. We thought maybe he'd come out and be okay, but Drake London gets hurt right before. If a player gets questionable at the last minute, he's not playing. Mm-hmm. You know that. Happens. Because something popped up and now it's a nightmare. So that was a sad Sunday morning out on my lineup.
I mean, the line of reasoning with the Falcons had been they play well at home, and they seem to be doing this every other game thing where when they're at home, they're a pretty solid team. So they can beat the Buffalo Bills in Atlanta, but they can lose to the Carolina Panthers 30-0 when they're in Carolina. And this week just totally broke that mold. I mean, the Dolphins defense has been atrocious. It's been a terrible team, a terrible defense. They got pummeled. And it was Kirk Cousins who was playing quarterback. He did absolutely nothing to sort of make his case for why he should maybe still be a starting quarterback in the NFL. That's gone now. And so maybe your hope is when Michael Penix comes back, when Drake London is healthy, they're going to be okay. But I don't see how Bijan Robinson, regardless of how far down you are in that game, I don't see how Bijan doesn't touch the ball 30 times. I mean, that's what you have to do in that scenario. And I don't think that Raheem Morris seems to lose his cool a little bit as a head coach when they get into bad situations. I kind of think that he's a good coach. He seems to be a player's coach, but when their backs are against the wall, they don't often rally and put up a fight, at least not this season. It's just kind of like, if they get punched in the mouth and they're down by 2 touchdowns at halftime, they don't look like the kind of team that's going to kind of make a comeback.
No. Well, and we've seen, the Titans are terrible. They get blown out. We've seen some of these teams get blown out. The Jets have been blown out plenty and that kind of thing. But a team like the Falcons should not have been blown out twice this year.
Yeah.
With the talent they have, and especially when you have maybe the best running back in the league. I mean, Jonathan Taylor at this point is, but Bijan's in that mix. You can't get blown out like that again. So I just think with the Jets, Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields are playing for their jobs, playing for their jobs. With the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel and Tua are both they're coaching for their jobs. So this was just like a backs against the wall, just kind of a last death rattle. I don't think that either one of those teams are good, but they were able to win this week. I actually want to go on record and say that I think the coach who maybe should be on next to be fired watch is actually Zach Taylor. If you watch the way that they managed that game at the end of the game when they were down by 1 point was absolutely atrocious. And I just think at this point, there is so much evidence that Joe Burrow is such an incredible NFL quarterback that he can put a bad team on his back. And the combination of Burrow and Jamar Chase, it covers a multitude of sins. I don't think that I do not think that Zach Taylor is a good coach, and their defense is wretched. It is awful. And then it's like, Flacco ran into the locker room, I guess, to go to the bathroom. I think he had to go potty. I think he got a little hurt.
What?
He's a little banged up.
What the Jets are no. What are they doing? The Jets are running the 2-point conversion to go up by 1. They're at the end of they're kicking. They're kicking, and he takes off from the sideline, runs in the tunnel as they're doing that, and is back by the start of their final possession
so maybe
of the game. I think he went to the bathroom, and then he came out there, and you would have thought that it was a tie game with 10 minutes left in the game. The way that they were playing, the way that Taylor was coaching, they ended that game. They lost that game the way that they did with 2 remaining timeouts. And Zach Taylor just looked like he was just totally out of his element on the sideline. So I actually think that there's a scenario where the next coach that may be fired is Taylor, in spite of the fact that Burrow isn't playing. I just think that the jury
do that,
is,
though.
That's
tough to
injuries
fire
save
coach.
These guys, right?
Yeah,
It's like
I know.
Injuries are saving Daboll's
I don't
job.
disagree with you. That's just a tough
I just
sell.
think he looks, when things are going well and Joe Burrow is in the game, I think that I could coach the Bengals when Joe Burrow is in the game and probably coach them above a 500 record. He has looked inept at times this season. And I just want the Bengals to be better than they are and to not waste Joe Burrow's career, because he truly is an incredible quarterback. But I could not believe that they lost that game, and it looked like a mess at the end of that game. So they're kind of back to square one, even with Joe Flacco, I think, is their kind of fill-in quarterback. So
yeah, fantasy ramifications. The positive is Chase Brown's looking better.
Well, did you know that Jamar Chase, over the last 3 games, has been since Flacco started playing quarterback for them, has been targeted 54 times. In 3 games, he has been targeted 54 times. If you were to extrapolate that out over a whole season, it's more than 300 targets on the season. So Joe Flacco, to his credit, at least knows the assignment, which is just throw the ball to Jamar Chase as many times as possible. So those skill players will still be serviceable, but I think the real Bengals are such a mess. It's such a demoralizing team to be a fan of, I think. So
no
tough
question.
ending to that game.
All right, the last thing I want to get to, and then we'll jump into some accountability and confession, is, all right, it was the big tight end day, and they made a big deal about it. The tight end position it's this way every year. I'm even in a fantasy league where we actually tried to get rid of the tight end position in fantasy because it's just so difficult. We were going to do a flex, wide receiver, tight end flex spot, but it got voted down. But it is the hardest position to navigate week in, week out. And this past week, we saw some decent performances. It wasn't a crazy day, but Tucker Kraft led the way in a big way and has been awesome this season. What do you make of the tight end position kind of midway point of the season? who do you trust the most? Who are you out on? To me, it's just a weekly shenanigans situation.
Yeah.
Like I've got a tight end situation. I have David Njoku and Juwan Johnson. And I've been playing the guessing game with these two knuckleheads and who's injured, who's healthy. It's been a nightmare for me. The league I have Tyler Warren in, I'm loving life.
Love it. Yeah.
I told you last week what's boiling Bryce. George Kittle scored me 0 points. And then this week he was solid. And then he was out for half the year, more than half the year. So anyway, that's my spot on the take on the spot.
You said it exactly right. It's like this every season. There's a group of like maybe 5 tight ends where it's just set it and forget it, right? Yeah. And you feel great if you have Tyler Warren, if you have Trip Bride. Those guys are in your starting lineup. You don't think about it. I think streaming tight ends is a real possibility. There are styles of defenses that sort of open up that are more susceptible to tight ends catching passes and tight ends scoring touchdowns. And so if you're on one of those platforms that shows you the strength of the defense against the tight end position, I think that's a real way that you can kind of, if one of these sort of, do I go with an Njoku versus whoever else, look at the defense that they're playing. I really think there is something to that with the tight end position more than just about any other position. And so, yeah, you can kind of just stick somebody in there and hope that they catch a touchdown. But the main thing is just not to stress too much about it, because tight end is, no one really knows unless you've got one of those studs. No one knows what to do. And you're just hoping for a TD. You're hoping for 10 points out of your tight end on any given week.
And where I'm just kicking myself too is that I was in on Mason Taylor before the season, and then I only ended up with him on one team, and he's been up and down. The Jets have been but this past week, pretty solid game, got kind of the game-winning touchdown. So I wish I had more of Mason Taylor. And then I'm just so upset. Like I've had a nice fantasy season. I'm right here, wrong here, whatever. But the one guy that got away is Oronde Gadsden.
I was going to ask what you think
with the Chargers, because I was in on him early, and then he had a couple bad games. I'm like, I guess he's not that good. And now he's been on a roll, and I'm just watching him play great, and he's not on any of my teams. Yeah. And I buy into him. I think he's going to be great the rest of the way. The Chargers had like Will Dissly and the other knucklehead that's been there for a while. Oh, yeah. No, Will Dissly's been there. Who they have? Conklin. They got a couple like
they're stringing it together with these mediocre tight ends. Yeah.
Mediocre guys that are still like in the mix. But now Gadsden has risen above those guys, and he's the clear guy. And Herbert throws it 1,000 times.
He looks great.
Yeah,
I heard somebody make the Antonio Gates comparison with him.
Yeah,
he looks like that kind of athlete. So that could be a real like league winner if you found Gadsden on your waivers.
Gosh, he's
love
great.
To have him at tight end.
And then of course your boy Kyle Pitts. Like, even though the Falcons were bad, he had a good day.
He's a PPR guy, which is weird. He catches a lot of passes. He doesn't do a lot with them, but he gets a lot of targets right now. So
and then of course last night I'm playing against Travis Kelce, and he had the game of his career, of his season. I should
last
say.
Chance to sell high on Travis Kelce.
Ooh,
anyone who owns Travis Kelce should immediately see what they can get for him, because with Rashee Rice back.
Yeah, but he's been bad. I mean, he played great with Kelce.
Rashee Rice is the centerpiece of that offense, and there are weeks where Kelce totally disappears. And so I'm just telling you, we'll come back to this later. I think I put one of these in our Would You Rather section of our show notes. So we'll come back around to Travis Kelce.
All right, fair enough. So yeah, that's an interesting one. But yeah, Kelce, he's always got these games in him, even at this stage of his career. But I do agree with you that we can't expect it every week. But with the shenanigans at the position, it's nice to have Travis. I'd rather have Travis Kelce than Juwan Johnson as I ride that train now with the new quarterback, Tyler Shook.
Would you trade Travis Kelce for Gadsden right now?
Yeah.
Sure, right?
I do want Gadsden. I wish I could get Gadsden.
I think you maybe could pull that. Anyway, we'll come back to it. We'll come back to him a little bit.
All right. We here on the show, we do like to acknowledge when we get things wrong, even though I'm just doing that with Gadsden. But let's do that a little bit more, and we'll celebrate and cry together. Here we go.
Pardon me, Mr. Perfect! I guess I forgot that you never ever make a mistake!
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
I am the smartest man alive!
All right, every season, I have to confess this. There's a running back that I want to make it happen. Like, I think that I'm the head coach, and I'm willing this guy to be more on the field, to be out there and more a part of the offense. And it just never happens to the level that I expect it to. And so I put this guy in my starting lineup thinking that this will be the week. This will be the week. And so because it was Bimageddon last week, I decided it's finally Brashard Smith. Like he did it last week. He had a good game. I was like, oh, it's going to continue. Kareem Hunt's a little banged up. Let's put Brashard Smith in my starting lineup. He did nothing on Monday night. Now, so I have to confess that. But now we're getting, I'm getting teased again. Hey, for Pacheco to get injured, but he did get hurt at the end of the game. It looks like he's going to be week to week, so he'll probably be a late questionable guy. But if he is out, now I'm going to be back to the drawing board with Brashard Smith. So if you've been listening to the show all season, you've heard me talk about him, and you're probably like, dude, give it up. I can't give it up on Brashard. I still one more chance. Come on, Brashard.
Yeah. So
that's an interesting situation with the Chiefs.
Don't you just think there's this category of quarterback in the NFL? And I'm thinking about guys like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen. I think Drake May has ascended into this category where they are such good NFL quarterbacks that they can utilize any one of the 6 weapons that they have available to them on any given week. So I would just say, like, it's just like you don't know whether to start Stephon Diggs or Kayshon Boutte with New England. You don't know whether to start
Hunter Henry, even for that matter.
Yeah, Hunter Henry. You don't know whether to start Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir with the Buffalo Bills. And I would say
Kincaid.
Right. Exactly. That those quarterbacks are so good that they can beat you without utilizing one of their main weapons on any given week. So I would just say with the Chiefs, the only guy that I could start with confidence the rest of the season is Rashee Rice.
That's it.
But you probably, if you own Travis Kelce, if you own Xavier Worthy, and now I would say if you have Brashard Smith and also Kareem Hunt. You probably just have to put those guys in your lineup, recognizing that they're boom bust options. You don't want to have a whole roster of boom bust guys, but if you're throwing Brashard Smith into your flex and just hoping that he breaks off a long sort of dump down pass or gets a touchdown, I think you could do worse than that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You just don't know from week to week what's going to happen there.
But Hunt gets into the end zone regularly.
He's their goal line guy. Yeah, and they're going to have a lot of
opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Let's see. What else do I need to confess? That's my big confession. On a positive note, I stuck with Troy Franklin and kept him on my roster and started him this week. And he had another big week, got in the end zone. And so I like Troy Franklin a lot. I think he scored twice. He had 20-some points
TDs this week.
Yeah. So huge day for him. So I'm excited about that. And on the flip side, I was in on him and Cortland Sutton. And so kind of like this Broncos passing attack with even with Bo Nix. But Sutton has been a letdown. And I'm not ready to give up on him just yet. But even to your point with his other quarterbacks, the Broncos are a little bit that way too.
Yeah, Bo Nix can do that too.
Marvin Mims gets in the mix. Evan Ingram has made appearances. Even Patrick Bryant, I think, was catching a couple passes.
Pat Bryant scored a TD this week. Adam Troutman will get a touchdown every once in a while. Bo Nix can sling it around a little bit. Yeah,
but there's volume there, so you still want those guys.
Have those guys in your lineup.
I think Franklin and Sutton are still guys I want down the stretch. The Broncos are good. They're going to be in some of these great matchups as they're fighting for playoff spots with the Chargers, with the Chiefs, scoring some points, and so I'm happy about that. So, what do you want to hold yourself accountable to and confess today?
A couple guys that came to mind this week for me, and this is a guy I've been trying to figure out what to do with. I traded for this guy in a dynasty league, and I really regret this move. But coming into the season, all the hype about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And if you watch these Commanders games, he's getting the first opportunity. So they're not starting the game with a running back by committee. They are starting the game, giving him the lion's share of work on the first couple of drives of the game. And then it's like they're seeing this isn't working. Something he doesn't have something that you need to be. And so then they'll start to sprinkle in McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. And by the end of the game, or really by the second half, it's like a full running back by committee. My question about the Commanders in general is, is it just if Jaden Daniels is playing, it's sort of like wheels up, like you can have some confidence that their offense is going to move and you can play some of these guys. And if he's not, if it's Marcus Mariota, you just kind of bench all of them. McLaurin caught a touchdown last night.
All right.
And now he's out again with this quad injury.
Debo dropped a huge pass.
Debo dropped a bit. It's just like, I think that Jaden really is that guy where sort of he is the rising tide that lifts all boats. And when he's not playing, I think that Krosky-Merritt is unstartable right now. He's not doing anything. And I was invested in him coming into the season. So am I right there? I'm in big trouble if I'm relying on him as like my RB2 or something.
That was a gut feeling I had with that backfield. It was just too murky for me. Yeah. They're too funny with who they start. Like last year, they did that too. Guys that they would activate. He was on practice squad. McNichols was on like practice squad, or Rodriguez was on practice squad one week. He's starting the next.
Yeah, you're right.
Back on practice. Right. It's like, get out of here with the Washington run game. I can't deal with that.
That's good, man. Yeah, you're exactly right. They were doing this last season. The other guy, I mean,
along those lines, sorry. The Arizona backfield also is that way. They just cut Michael Carter.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, he's like, oh, go get him on waivers. No, I mean, they're a joke. The Cardinals are a joke. They need to fire their coach too. Don't fall for the Cardinals. I did like Trey Benson, so I will confess I wanted Trey Benson, and maybe if he comes back, I've got him on the IR spot. I'm not going to drop him, but you do not want Cardinals run game.
Trey Benson is going to come back. So he's going to be back in a month. I will say they cut Michael Carter. It seems like Gannon is still mad about whatever DeMarcado for that drop at the goal line, which did cost them a win. I mean, that they had a couple of weeks where they lost by a point or two, and that was one of them. The last man standing there is Zondervan Knight, Bam Knight. So I will say that I think that it's at least clear that he is going to be the starter who gets the lion's share of the work. Now whether that has value is a totally different question. You're right, because they are, I would say, fairly categorized as a dysfunctional franchise at this point. But when Kyler Murray is feeling it, when he gets in a groove, he can still run like a high-flying offense. And so I think Bam Knight is a guy you got to hold on to. I'm interested to see what you know who they play this week.
I do not.
The Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, well, that's always nice.
That solves a lot of problems.
That's a little different.
Yeah. So I think Bam Knight is very startable this week as the guy who seems like he's going to be the clear starter against the Cowboys. And Benson will be back at some point, and I think you'll be able to start him. Then
there's probably a little more clarity. But yeah, lately it's just been silly
it's a mess back there
in that backfield.
It's a mess.
All right. Well, let's we probably have more to confess, but we'll stop there.
Plenty more we could confess, but yeah.
But yeah, I'll admit too, I still have this one team. I'm in 4 leagues that I manage. One that I just cannot buy a win. No matter what I do, I can't buy a win. I showed you my roster today.
Me your roster.
It's not a bad roster.
Yeah.
But the matchups every week. So I am with you. If you have one of those teams where you're just like, I can't catch a break, no matter what, I get it. Drake London at the last second. It's just sometimes you get those teams and then you just that's your year. So we're in this together. We persevere. We keep going. We keep trying to turn the tide. That's it. All right. But every week on this show, we love doing our weekly breakout where we take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to life, fantasy leagues, discuss this breakout topic during league meetings. And so we're encouraged by the feedback that we hear from you and your leagues as you talk about these topics. Little fantasy, little faith, little life. We just want to set you up, and then you get to enjoy the dialogue and the conversations. And so this week we're talking about envy and just sort of this thought of, I wish I had your team. And so, when we draft our fantasy team, we don't always pick our spot in the draft order, but we try to make the most of whatever draft picks we're given. And so we try to make the right choices with our team, and when we put together, the best roster possible. And so throughout the draft and throughout the season, we understand that we're not always going to get every player we want on our roster. There's that guy that we, maybe targeted in the draft, or even weekly when we go to the waiver wire, we're like, oh, I want this player, and we put in our bid, or we put in our waiver claim. We want that guy. And then what happens? We don't get that guy. And that guy ends up on somebody else's team. And the whole season, we're watching that guy just go off and have a great season. And we're thinking, oh man, I wish I had Jonathan Taylor on my team. I'm watching Taylor just bust another 50-yard run going, man, I want that guy. I want that guy. And so this is what we deal with. And so oftentimes what we'll do is we'll look at our own roster and we don't like what we see. We're going, I got this guy. He's underachieving. This guy's letting me down. And then I look at the matchup that week and I look at the team on the other side and I go, oh, I love that guy. I wish I had that guy. Oh, come on. You got that quarterback too. I want all those players. And so we find ourselves, wanting what someone else has, wanting what another fantasy manager has. And we may do our best to send trade requests, hoping that we can acquire those players for ourselves. We want them so bad, we'll send trades all the time. And earlier in this season, I kept trading for Nico Collins in a league and kept getting rejected, but I wanted him. And so then the other thing that happens is, we look at the top teams, right? We just realize how stacked they are. And we just think like, man, how does that guy have all of the good players? Are you kidding me? He has a top running back and a top receiver. And we're just like, man, I just want one of those. I just want one of the star running backs. And so we're jealous that we don't have one. And we're jealous we don't have two big time wide receivers. And we wish that we had more impressive players like that other guy in our league, like the guy at the top of the standings. And so what happens? We get frustrated. We then have regret and the disappointment sets in. And so when you think about this, is there a player that you've been jealous of, a manager that comes to mind, or a roster that you've seen where you've just been a little envious of this season?
I mean, I'm glad to say, with the I think this is the danger of playing in like keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, is that there can be, over the course of a few seasons, somebody who just does a manager who does everything right and really builds this juggernaut. And you look at that team and you're like, oh my goodness, nobody is beating this guy. So I'm in a league with a guy who over the years, he's built up this, he's got Christian McCaffrey, he's got Saquon Barkley, he's got Jonathan Taylor, It's just like his roster of running backs is just disgusting, but in general, I mean, I think we've named some of the fun players, always those fun risers every season are guys that are fun to have on your roster. But I actually have made it a point over the course of my fantasy career to look less and less at other people's teams. I really, especially if I'm trying to make trades, it's usually with the people who are in the bottom half of the league, because I think they're the ones who are the most open to making a trade. And so I really don't even look at the first place guy until I'm playing him. And then I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. Okay, maybe I can get lucky this week, But yeah, this is a thing that I did it so much in my early fantasy career, and it only leads to sort of dissatisfaction, discontentment, disappointment. And so I try not to really do a lot of like roster surfing of the other guys in my league.
It's good. So we got to get to that point. Absolutely. Last week we talked about temptations, and so this is one of those temptations, right. Which is to look at other people's rosters. And so ultimately, we just have to keep our eyes on our own team. And we have to make the best decisions that we can with what we have in front of us. This is the roster that we have. And yes, we can add and drop and make some trades, but we can't worry so much about, how well other fantasy managers are doing, unless, of course, we want to, compliment them or encourage them, right? Now, I don't know about that. I don't know if we can go that far, but that's the only reason. Okay, good for you, man. I see your roster. You've done a nice job. We can give them a little love for that. But ultimately, we have to look at our own roster and manage the roster that we have. That's what we're responsible for. We're responsible for our own roster. And so when it comes to our own lives, you can see the parallel here, because every day, we're tempted to believe that many people around us have a better team. And we look at their job titles, we look at their house, their car, maybe their marriage or their spouse or their kids. And if we're not careful, we can desire what they have, and we can envy what their life looks like. And we go, man, I wish I had that life. I wish I had that job. Oh man, my job's a nightmare. I'm dealing with all this kind of stuff. Look at his job. Look what he's doing. Gosh, he got another promotion. And so, we sometimes even, in fantasy, we want a player on another team, and we want something that someone else has. And so sometimes we'll even do our best to acquire it, right? We start chasing those things. We get so jealous or envious of somebody else that we then, oh man, I got to make it happen. I got to go try to get after it and chase that too. And so the bottom line, just like it is in fantasy, we have to keep up with our own roster. We have to be thankful for what we've been given. And do we believe that God has blessed us according to his will and his goodness and his faithfulness? And are we good stewards, and are we managing what we've been given? And are we, content with the wife that we've been given, the kids that we've been given, and are we making the most of that? And so the flip side of this is when we allow the envy and the jealousy and the covetousness, which is a biblical word. We don't necessarily use that word as much day to day in our language, But when we allow those things to start to creep in, it steals our joy, it steals our gratitude, it steals our contentment. And instead, we start living life with anger, frustration, disappointment. And what does that lead to? Then negativity, and we're held back, and we overlook the wonderful blessings that we've been given because we're always worried about what somebody else has. We're like, man, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. And whenever I bring up this topic, I always go to a very meaningless, well, it's not meaningless, but and he's a loyal listener, but my neighbor has a great yard. And I always look out my window and I look at his yard and I go, oh, man, I wish I had a backyard like Cameron. But I also, when that happens, I don't consider the amount of sacrifice that he makes to make that a great lawn. He's mowing multiple times a week to get that green grass, right? And so we do this in life because we long for what someone else has. Oh, I love that job. Well, we don't see what he has to go through to have that job. And maybe you might even be envious of my job. I got a great job. Sports and faith and Jesus and sports and fantasy, and I'm doing it. But you didn't see me Sunday night sweating over a weather situation for my golf tournament on and the challenge of having to go through that and the stress that I went through while also trying to carve pumpkins with my daughters and try to be there for them while I carry the weight of this ministry on a Monday. So you don't know what someone else is going through. And so we got to look at our own roster. We got to be responsible for our own lives, our own jobs, the gifts that God has given us, the skills that he's given us. Are we using them for his glory, for his purposes? And are we living with contentment and joy and satisfaction? Because we have way more than we deserve anyway. And so that's my encouragement today. Trip, you jump in, and then I got plenty of scripture to share today.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I mean, it's when we're talking about envy and jealousy, we're so susceptible to those things. They creep in so kind of unnoticed and insidious, and then they can really take root in our lives. I mean, I think the social media fueled world that we live in just adds to this, because you see the sort of most polished surface level version of somebody out there who has that life that you think that you want, that life that you're envious of. And contentment really, I mean, it's the other side of that coin. It's the cure, right? Envy robs us of joy, but contentment is the key to joy. And contentment is something that really has to be cultivated. I think in a fallen world where sin pervades our lives and our hearts so much, what we naturally drift into is jealousy. What we have to intentionally cultivate is contentment. And the good news is that God, by the power of his Holy Spirit, wants to cultivate that in us. So he works with us in that. It really is possible to develop deep contentment with your the family that God gives you, the job and the place that God gives you. But it's something we have to be thoughtful and intentional about.
That's right. And be aware of it too.
Right.
Because
to recognize when it's happening is really the first step. Yeah. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, you start thinking about it, you go, ooh, yeah, I'm getting envious here. I'm sensing some jealousy. And it rears its ugly head plenty in my life. And when other people get opportunities that I wish I had, or I think that I want, or when I see ministries or businesses further along in the process, and I go, oh man, I'm so envious. I wish that we were further along, and all those kinds of things. And I have to be reminded that, all right, I've got to trust God's timing. I got to trust the work that he's doing in me and through me and around me, and trust in his timing. And so, and again, and being content with where I'm at in the process. And even, marriage wise too. It's like, oh man, look at that awesome marriage. Oftentimes they've been married 30 years. So I'm not there yet. So let me go through some of the challenges and the growth and the maturity. And yes, I can learn from them and sort of long for some of those, the great marriage or the great careers. And absolutely we can have that as sort of a vision and something that we're striving toward. All of that is good. The challenge is when it leads to this negative envy. And when I get on LinkedIn and I finish looking at LinkedIn and now I'm filled with disappointment and discouragement going, I'm not doing enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. I'm not far enough along. I wish I had that guy's career. I wish I had his vacation home. I wish I had his sweet car. I'm not a big car guy, so I can't even say that. I don't care about cars, but you start saying those kinds of things, right? You wish this, you wish that. But here's what Scripture says. Let's go back to the 10 Commandments. Exodus 20:17. This is the Amplified translation. You shall not covet, that is, selfishly desire and attempt to acquire your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And so, of course, we don't have to deal with the oxes and all that today. But we still, what are we looking, what is catching our eye that we're like, man, I want that. I wish I had that. What is that? And so are we asking God to give us that heart of gratitude instead? And are we keeping our eyes fixed on him, or are our eyes always going on what we don't have, what we wish we had, versus the contentment for what we do have? Also, when we look at the book of wisdom, Proverbs 14:30, a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones.
That's a good verse.
And we know that because it eats away at us. We allow the envy to sort of it just rots our bones. I can't say it any better than that. And then Job 5:2, surely resentment destroys the fool and jealousy kills the simple. And so this is strong language about what this does. Envy and jealousy and resentment. That's another kind of word to throw in there as well. And then in James 3:16, it says, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. Because envy it can lead to not only sinful thoughts, negative thoughts, attitudes, perspectives, but oftentimes it can lead to negative behavior. When you really start envying something, coveting something, and what that could potentially lead to, as this verse says, it can lead to every evil practice and disorder. So any other thoughts on those?
Yeah, so much. I mean, I think even going back to that 10th commandment, right? There's this incredible logic. There's something profound about the way that God organizes the 10 commandments, because the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. That's a heart-oriented commandment. It's saying if there's something in your heart that you are putting higher and more central and more primary than me, your life is going to fall apart in all sorts of ways. And then the 10th commandment, and then there's all these commandments in between that are much more kind of external sins. But then the 10th commandment comes back around to that heart issue again. If in your heart you're saying, I need that thing that my neighbor has, that thing that belongs to the person next door to me to make me happy, your life is going to fall apart in all different ways. The other verse you quoted there, it's going to rot you from the inside out. It arises from within the heart. And so the Bible is full of all these warnings about how envy and jealousy and covetousness can mess us up. The verse that I always think of here, there's an often misquoted verse. We've all heard this verse. It's Corinthians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I think it's an amazing verse, and it's one of the most misappropriated, miscontextualized verses, because it usually people will use it and say, I can go out and seize this grand ambition, this great goal that I have. Jesus is with me, and so I can do all things. I'm strong enough to go out and do it. If you look at that verse in context, if you go back a couple of verses before to Philippians 4:11, Paul says, I've learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret to facing plenty or hunger, abundance or need with contentment. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? And so when we come to Jesus, recognizing, Jesus, I'm prone to envy. I'm prone to jealousy. But I'm in this time where I need you to teach me contentment. I need you to strengthen me for the life that is my real life in front of me. Not this life that I would imagine that I would have, or that I would like to have, or my biggest ambitions. The family, the vocation, the life that you have put right in front of me. I want the guys who are listening, people who are listening to this podcast, just to hear, you may feel like you're in a time of abundance or a low time, a time of need and hunger, or a time of great growth. You don't have a lot of control over the circumstances that you find yourself in on any given day. But Jesus promises to strengthen you, to love and to lead in the context that he has you, whether they're big or small. You know, this was such an important thing for me as a pastor, to look at other pastors with bigger platforms, bigger congregations, bigger fame, written a bunch of books, and to say, that's what I want. That's what I'm supposed to be. And to hear Jesus kind of whisper in my heart, no, this little group that I've put right in front of you, this little congregation, this little family, what I want you to do is to love them and to serve them and to be content with the life that I have given you. And there's so much joy and freedom in that. And Christ, that really, it can sound like settling, That's not what it is at all. It's actually embracing the life that Jesus has given you and living it with him. He will strengthen you to do greater things than you would imagine that you could do.
Man, it's so good. It's so good. And to wrap it up in light of the fantasy perspective, we focus on our roster. How do I improve this roster, and how do I put the best starting lineup in place? And so every day we're looking at our roster, and so we're looking at our life. Like, we're not going to get any better looking at our roster, or our roster isn't going to get any better by looking at the other roster, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I can't believe this guy. He's got 2 wide receivers that are top 10 wide receivers. I wish I had that team. That doesn't help your team, right? Now, you can learn from, I wonder how he put together this team. That's fine. And again, we can learn from other people that have a great life and have done things well. That's fine. But what the difference is the envy and the negative side of it. So I hope that we can just sort of examine our heart in that regard. And so we look at our life and go, okay, this is the job that I have. How can I do it better? How can I glorify God more in my career? This is the family God's given me. How do I help build this family up in the Lord and encourage my family and lead them well? How do I do that? Versus, oh man, I wish I had a son who had the star quarterback of the high school team. What does that do? Right? That just then that leads to all this negativity. Okay, this is the family I've been given. So anyway, we can go on and on. This is big for me. I wrestle with envy often, and have to continue to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus, satisfied in him. He's the only one that can satisfy, and to be grateful for the many blessings that he's given me. And so I hope that you'll go through that process as well. Be aware of when the envy, the jealousy sneaks in, and how do we respond appropriately, and diving into God's word and clinging to him. So that's this week's breakout. Good stuff from Trip as always, as well. And I hope you have a wonderful conversation with your league. And I hope you'll be honest. I hope you'll be honest about what you really get envious about. And who is it in your league that you're envious of their roster? And maybe there's somebody in your league that you're envious of their career or their status or their vacation home. Confess that a little bit. Wrestle with that. What's there? What's going on there? Admit that your neighbor has a better lawn. So I admit it. Cameron, you've got a better lawn. Way to go. Way to go. I'm proud of you. And maybe a little love for the guy instead, right? Throw a little love his way. So there you go. That's this week's breakout. All right. So let's, we got a few minutes left here on the show. And often on this show, we like to consider some of the players that are having a great season, or, last couple of weeks, they've been playing well. And we ask the question, should we jump on the bandwagon? And then what about the players that have been struggling the last couple of weeks? Are we ready to jump off? Here we go.
Get off the bandwagon.
It's time for Bandwagon Riding. Getting on, getting off. Make up your mind, all right?
All right. So we mentioned earlier, Saquon Barkley, first big game of the year. Now there's an injury concern. Apparently he would have been able to come back into the game, but they were blowing out the Giants anyway. But 31 points. Are you on the bandwagon now for Barkley the rest of the way?
I'm not sure that I am. I'm not sure that I am. I think it seems like this was the first. He had a 65-yard run early in this game. And then I think towards the end, when the game was out of hand, they also pulled him out. They said for like a little groin tweak or something like that, So that 65-yard run.
I don't like that phrase. That's a tough phrase.
It doesn't feel good. Yeah,
I don't like that phrase.
That 65-yard run was the first run that he has had this season that was longer than 20 yards. He's only got that one. I just think with the volume that he had last season, he seems like he's lost a step a little bit. The Eagles are so solid that they can continue to win without him playing well. So he'll have more games like this, I'm sure. And he's always going to be like he's just going to be a solid running back who's probably going to score you around 15 points every week. But if I could capitalize on this performance, the thing I wanted to remind people of, just a note on bye weeks and trades really quickly, when you're trading a player or trying to acquire another player, for especially here in the middle of the season, one of the things that you want to think about is, I don't ever want to eat a player's bye week if I can make someone else do that for me, right? So what I mean is Saquon's about to go into a bye right now. If I could trade him for a running back that I think is going to be pretty solid, that has already had their bye week, such that I avoid one of those total buys, you get an extra week of points, and you're making someone else eat Saquon's bye there. That's an important kind of advanced principle for trading in fantasy football. Is I'm always looking for, can I acquire a player who I think is good, whose bye week has already passed, and get rid of one of my guys who's going to have a bye in like week 14, right? When I'm pushing for the playoffs, so that's kind of a next level. So for that reason,
that's really good insight. Absolutely.
That's something that people don't think about. And it's just a little way to get an edge in your league. And I would say, if you could take this 31-point performance from Saquon, and before he goes on bye, leverage that into a player or two that you think are going to be solid. I think that I would do that. He's still going to be just a really solid, probably like low-end RB1, high-end RB2 rest of the season. But if I could turn this into something, I might consider doing that. So I don't think that I'm fully on the Saquon bandwagon.
All right, that's great insight. And this season, every season, we always love rookie running backs. I always love rookie running backs. Part of the game with rookie running backs is being patient, waiting for them to get involved, especially if there is a proven veteran already in the backfield. And so the bandwagon riding for rookie running backs is huge. You jump on, you jump off. And one of those players, RJ Harvey, has been one of those guys you've had to be patient with. J.K. Dobbins carrying most of get most of the opportunity the majority of the season. We've seen glimpses of RJ Harvey. But this past week, a little bit of a breakout. And if you watch him run, he's good. J.K. Dobbins is still healthy, and it's a miracle. We're 8 weeks through the season, and Dobbins is still healthy. But I'm jumping on that RJ Harvey bandwagon. Jump on, toot, and trade Dobbins.
Yeah.
If you could trade Dobbins for anything, get him. I would do that. And if you can get Harvey, get Harvey. So I'm on the bandwagon for sure. And he's not on any of my teams, but I'm on the bandwagon. All right. Let me ask you, are you on any Browns players bandwagon? We've seen the tight ends do well with Dylan Gabriel. Quinshon Judkins a little banged up, so Dylan Sampson might get an opportunity. Any of those guys you want to jump on?
I think that you can just put either one of those tight ends in your starting lineup, and hope for a pretty solid week. Yeah. So I'm not sure that you can trust Jerry Jeudy or any of the wide receivers. And Quinshon Judkins, obviously, we got to wait and see what's going on with this shoulder thing. But I would feel good about Njoku or Fannin in my starting lineup, just realizing that the Browns could have one of these dud weeks where nobody really does anything. I also think that there's a chance. The chance is becoming smaller, but I think there's a chance that Njoku gets traded. And so that's another guy that I'm holding on to, hoping that maybe he goes to a team that has a need at tight end, because I still think that he's a solid tight end and a good athlete. I think it's probably less than 50% chance that he gets traded, but there's this group of about a half dozen players that I'm keeping my eye on, both them and their backup. If Njoku gets traded, that's good for him and that's good for Fannin. And so I would hold on to either one of those guys if I had them on my roster.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the Browns' strategy because they stink, and they also don't have another receiver. Yeah. And Jerry Jeudy hasn't done much either. I mean, they have no receivers. Cedric Tillman's out. Yeah. I don't even know who their second. I don't even know who
like Isaiah Bond.
Oh, he hasn't done anything.
Right, he hasn't done anything, but he's been their wide receiver 2 on weeks because they don't have anybody. Yeah.
So they rely on the tight end for their passing game. Same with the Saints. That's why I still hang on to Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
Shaheed every once in a while, maybe, but it's Olave and Juwan Johnson. That's what they've got.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Anything else? All right. We've only got a couple minutes left here today. Let's jump into some waiver wire discussion, and especially, the teams on a bye this week that we got to consider: the Browns, the Jets, the Eagles, and the Bucks. So that opens up the door for, certain guys you need to pick up and everything. Who are you running to the waiver wire to get this week? Who are you most excited to pick up?
I mean, Tyrone Tracy is the obvious answer there. He's going to be the Giants' starting running back going forward. And last year he was pretty good. So I still believe that Tyrone Tracy is a good running back. He's a guy that probably has gotten dropped with the ascendance of Cam Scatterbo. And so he's the sort of person where if you're desperate at running back, you spend 90 to 100% of your fab to acquire him at this point of the season. It's just, you got to get a player like that if they're available on waivers. And then I do think that Zondervan Knight, Bam Knight, is going to be the Cardinals' starting running back for the next 4 weeks until Trey Benson comes back with the release of Michael Carter. So that's another one that could just be a fill-in guy for you for the next month if you just need to string it together at running back. And then the only other one that I would note is that what we saw when in bits and pieces in the most recent Eagles game is it seems like Tank Bigsby has supplanted Will Shipley as the handcuff,
which is a bummer.
To Saquon Barkley.
Will went to my high school.
I know we like Will
for Will, man.
And I think Will looks good. To be clear, I think that Will looked good. Tank Bigsby has looked better in the limited action that he's gotten, and it's clear that he is second on the depth chart there. So that's just a handcuff guy to be aware of if he happens to have gotten dropped in your league.
Yeah, gosh, that's crazy. But in short benches, bye weeks, some of those guys sneak onto the waiver wire. But you want the backup for Saquon and all these top guys. You definitely want to. Emmanuel Wilson, he's definitely somebody to pick up. The one guy I picked him up, I think in 2 leagues last week, Colston Loveland. And I was actually surprised that he was on waivers. Yeah. Now, he didn't have a big week this week, but the Bears stunk this week, which was disappointing. Who'd they lose to? I can't even think of who they lost to.
The Ravens.
The Ravens finally got a win. They beat the Bears. But Colston Loveland was on the field the entire game, and not the entire game, but as the tight end. I'm fumbling here at the end of the show here. Cole Kmet was out,
right? Back
injury. Colston Loveland, he's the guy, rookie, top draft pick. I like him kind of as a guy that could break out. And we talked about the tight end position being a disaster. You're just trying to figure out. You're guessing every week. Loveland's worth kind of a dart throw, getting into the mix, getting some opportunity. Hopefully the Bears play better this coming week.
We just get biased by these Brock Bowers and these Tyler Warrens who just come, these players who immediately come in and have a big impact. And we forget that the normal trajectory, especially for a position like tight end, is that it takes them a while to develop. And so I think under Ben Johnson, I think you could see Colston Loveland being the kind of guy who becomes a startable tight end in the second half of the season. Another name, this is a nasty one. This is a nasty boy, okay? But deep league, if you're desperate at tight end, I just think you don't start this guy yet, but you pick up Gunnar Helm, who is the tight end for it. Look, man, he caught a touchdown this week. Cam Ward likes him.
Okay,
he was a touted kind of guy coming out of college. He was a very good tight end in college, and I think that Shigo Okonkwo is another one of these guys who seems to be on the trading block and could end up on another team, and so that would make Gunnar Helm a starting tight end for a team that's desperate for pass catchers, and maybe they're a little bit better in the second half of the season than they were in the first half of the season. So that's a gross one. But if I was really desperate at tight end, I'm not starting Gunnar Helm in week 9, but I would store him on my bench just on the off chance that Shigo Okonkwo gets traded. And then maybe you've got somebody you can just throw in there and hope for a touchdown every week. I think that's a viable kind of strategy if you punted tight end.
Okay. So when it comes to when we pick guys up, we also have to drop guys. So I'm leaving my last soccer game head coach this year. And I'm talking to a Texas fan. And I go, he's in my fantasy league. And I go, man, I've been trying to trade you Jaden Blue. And he goes, I don't want Jaden Blue. And I go, oh, you don't? Okay. I've been storing him on a couple teams. If my Texas buddy doesn't want Jaden Blue, I'm not sure that I want Jaden Blue.
Uh-huh.
So I know he got a little bit of carries in a blowout game against Denver on Sunday. Javonte Williams continues to be the guy. He got 2 touchdowns. I thought Javonte would just not be very good, would be injured, and then Blue would maybe get more of an opportunity. I'm starting to sour on that. So of the backup running backs, I'm always trying to play that game of who's going to get the next opportunity, who's going to be that guy. So Devin Neal with New Orleans is someone I'm a little more intrigued by because New Orleans, they want to see what they have with their young players. They're putting on Tyler Shook, which has a ridiculous last name, but hey, we're going to see what he's got, the way that it's spelled. It's always funny to me ever since the draft. It's like, wait, what are we talking about here? I'm trying to teach my daughter how to spell and read. Tyler Shook, it's spelled anyway.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
But Devin Neal is a backup running back now for Alvin Kamara. What's the point of playing Kamara at this point? I mean, seriously, what are we doing? So Devin Neal's a guy you want. I'm souring on Jaden Blue. Maybe you have to drop him.
I think even if Javonte gets hurt, Jaden Blue is an undersized running back. I think it would be more a committee between Blue and a guy named Phil Maffa, who played for the Clemson Tigers last year. He's the more big bruising back there, and I think that's probably the approach that the Cowboys would take. So I don't want Javonte to get hurt. He's been a great sort of diamond in the rough that you discovered this season. But if something were to happen to him, I'm not even sure if I would bid on Jaden Blue, or at least I would make a low bid, and I might go try to like secretly add Phil Maffa like in the middle of the night, thinking that he may get a little more volume than people expect. So I'm with you. Blue's droppable, I think.
Yeah. Isaiah Davis, I would hang on to with the Jets.
Got to hang on to him.
Don't
Bryce
drop
is
him.
another one of those guys that should be traded. If the Jets are paying, I just don't understand why, like the Saints, Kamara is a fan favorite. I know he's been loyal to that franchise, but if you're in the situation that you're in and you've got a 29-year-old running back, it only makes sense to trade that player. And I know that sounds ruthless. I don't know anything about like sort of the locker room or relationships and the relationship between GM and player and the trust that you're trying to build. But I think Devin Neal is a great little kind of secret stash to think about.
A little flyer.
And Isaiah Davis is absolutely in that category as well.
Yeah. And then, of course, if Tyjae Spears is still available on waivers, you want him. He had a nice week this week. But the Titans are tough to trust at this point. So there you go. There's a few waiver wire thoughts, but good luck to you in week 9. I hope that you were encouraged by our conversation today about envy. And man, let's choose contentment and gratitude. That's the difference. So as we trust in Jesus and follow him, he gives us that contentment and gratitude. When our eyes are on him, that will be the response. So for Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected. And through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well. And I hope you'll join me as we live life as fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your league meeting. And we'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.